Hi, everybody. I'm Brent Stafford, and welcome to a special edition of RegWatch with coverage of the Taxpayers Protection Alliance Good Cop, Bad Cop, the counter conference to COP10, the World Health Organization's Conference of the Parties to the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, happening this week in Panama City, Panama. Many critics often accuse the World Health Organization of maintaining obsessive and paranoid secrecy regarding its Conference of the Parties, and this year, COP10 has proved to be no exception. Joining us today live from Panama at the Taxpayers Protection Alliance Good Cop, Bad Cop Counter Conference is David Williams, President at TPA, and Martin Cullip, TPA International Fellow and longtime friend of the show. Gentlemen, it's great to see you both.
Good to see you.
Great to be here, Brent.
I'm just turning off the Twitter feed here. I'm not too sure if that audio bled through, but just had to turn that off. Yeah, so gentlemen, Panama, tell us, what's been going on?
Boy, what a crazy start to the conference, right? As we're expecting this live stream of the World Health Organization to start at 10 a.m. local time. Nothing. 10:30, nothing. 11 o'clock, nothing. And there was no live stream. And this was very troublesome because we're concerned about the transparency of the World Health Organization. And for a taxpayer group, the United States is sending $400 million a year to the World Health Organization. They can afford a live stream. They can afford to live stream a conference like this, like a critical conference like this. And really, that's why we're here, is that we knew that some sort of shenanigans were going to happen. And this is really this is day one, and we've already seen this happen. So it really just, validifies everything why we're here, right? I mean, this is why we're here, to call them out and to fact check and to make sure that they are transparent.
Now, Martin, why don't you fill us in a little bit exactly what is the relevance of COP10? I mentioned that their secrecy. Is that true, or are they a real secret organization?
Well, some of the things we've been talking about today is how consumers used to be able to turn up and sit in the public gallery. But they used to get thrown out, and we said this was non-transparent, a bit opaque and hiding behind closed doors for their decision making. But they've actually got worse this year. They made consumers apply 60 days in advance, and then you had to fill in all sorts of forms. You had to show a letter of intent. You had to give your passport details, and I think it was 5 years of a resume kind of thing. And it didn't really matter because all the consumers who applied got the same letter rejecting their ability to go in. And people who went round the convention centre last night had a look, and they had queues of people queuing up to get their registration for the COP conference. And there was a sign up saying you can't come in as a member of the public unless you've been pre-authorised by FCTC, which of course was no one. So we had some of those people here, and Thomas O'Gorman from Mexico was explaining the process, how he went through that. So we're actually in a situation where the COP process has become even more difficult for consumers to access than it was before, and it was always pretty dire before that.
Now, COP10 brings together tobacco control representatives from over 190 countries that have signed the international treaty. What is that treaty?
Well, the treaty is an international treaty. It's the first treaty that WHO has ever done, and it's been going for 20 years. Just last year, it had its 20th anniversary. And what's quite striking about it is that when it was first ratified and put into force, there were 1.1 billion smokers in the world, and now the latest results a couple of months ago came out, and there are now 1.25 billion smokers in the world. So yeah, you could put some of that down to increase in populations, but it still shows that there's really not much change, and it hasn't had much effect on smoking rates at all. And now what we're seeing, and we've seen for a number of years with the WHO now, is total stubbornness and reluctance or resistance, full-on resistance to tobacco harm reduction products. So much so that they're trying at this conference to try and ban all sorts of different aspects of products. They want to redefine smoke. They want to basically just treat all of these products exactly the same as combustible cigarettes. So although they seem to be totally opposed to big tobacco or tobacco industry, their actions are actually protecting the cigarette trade, which is, I don't see why they can't notice this themselves, I have to say.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, to put a fine point on some of the things that they're considering here at COP10, which could be obviously very damaging. And we've talked about them on RegWatch episodes before, including with you, and that is the need or desire to redefine smoke, so cigarette smoke, to be vapor. And so, poof, if they're able to make such a redesignation, then all of the laws against anti-smoking laws could apply completely to nicotine vaping. I find that incorrigible.
Yeah, it's entirely a political thing. It's a political thing they're trying to do. They're trying to con everyone and go against the rules of physics that say that these products they emit smoke. But we had Roberto Sussman, who's a scientist, an astrophysicist, on one of our panels today. He was saying this is impossible. If you have that daft definition of smoke, then he said you haven't got a smoke-free kitchen in the world, because the moment you cook something and it lets off steam or any sort of visible vapor, then you're in a smoke-filled kitchen. So it's completely ridiculous, and it is designed exactly like you say, Brent, to try and say that all of these products are tobacco products because they emit smoke, and therefore they can be all treated the same. It's just a twisting of science and language, really.
Feels very Soviet to me.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick moment. I've got a prepared clip here from an interview that David and I did last week, and we're going to do that over the next couple of days. We're going to be broadcasting live at 4 o'clock every day, all this week. And so hopefully by the end of this, we'll have these tobacco controllers' number, if that's possible. But let's just have a quick listen at this clip.
TPA is a rapid response taxpayer group. And what that means is things happen fast in Washington, D.C., where we're based. So there are times where we need to get a letter to Capitol Hill on a particular piece of legislation, and that may be needed within the hour. So it's making sure that we get our voice heard, get the taxpayers and consumers' voices heard on Capitol Hill. It's reaching out to the media on a rapid response basis with press releases. And really, that is our brand, is making sure that we are to do that. And we have a group of people that are amazing writers and deep thinkers. And we combine the two because we need to write things quickly at times. But then there are other times where we have some time where we can write reports in longer form. But really, it's making sure that our voice is heard, that the consumer's voice is heard, the taxpayer voice is heard in a timely manner. And whenever Congress needs it, or the media needs it, or really citizens need to hear it.
Now, is it about applying pressure?
The goal of TPA is really to apply pressure on Congress, on the White House, but also international governments, because we have seen the growth in the United Nations, the World Health Organization, the European Union, European Commission, and we have seen really bad policy coming out of these international organizations. And what we're trying to do is get people activated and to contact their member of Congress, the member of Parliament, to really voice their voice and to have their concerns heard by the proper people. And that's what we want to be, is we want to be a catalyst for that. We want to help people do that, because we know people are working 8 to 5, 9 to 6, whatever their job is, and they don't have time to really go through a lot of the information that's coming out of government. And what we want to do is take that information, distill it in a way that's easy for people to understand, but also easy for people to contact their elected or non-elected official.
So you mentioned global organizations. Obviously, the World Health Organization is probably the most prominent. How do you assess how the WHO has been handling issues around tobacco, about nicotine, and, say, vaping?
Well, first and foremost, the World Health Organization is a taxpayer-funded organization. So all the policies that are coming out of this group of the WHO are funded by taxpayers. And that's why taxpayers' voices need to be heard. And when you look at the ridiculous science that's coming out of the World Health Organization, it's appalling. And it's really counteractive and counterintuitive at times. And what we want to do is we want to bring science back into the World Health Organization. And tobacco harm reduction is a great place to start, because these products, whether it's vaping,
e-cigarettes, heat not burn, snus, you name it. There are these innovative products that are coming out that are helping people quit smoking. And that should be the goal of the World Health Organization, is to help people quit smoking. These products are working around the world. You look at Japan and other countries that have heat not burn and that are embracing e-cigarettes and vaping. Heart disease is plummeting because these products work. The World Health Organization doesn't recognize this. They spend billions of dollars a year to send people around the world for conferences and other travel, and they're not getting it. They don't talk to the right people when it comes to a lot of scientific issues, but in particular, tobacco harm reduction and helping people.
And so there you go, David. Well said.
Yeah, and it is about the science, right? We know about political science. Well, it shouldn't be political science. It should be real science. And there have been studies that have been done on these products for years now. You know, companies have spent billions of dollars to look at the science, and it's irrefutable that these products are saving lives. And that's what we're trying to say, is that if you're funding an organization like the World Health Organization, use the best science. And I remember it was, I guess, about 4 years ago when the World Health Organization said that COVID couldn't be transmitted, it wasn't an airborne transmission. It was a famous tweet that they put out in late February or early March of 2020, and we know that they were wrong. And they were being manipulated by the Chinese to put out that tweet and to take this position. And they're doing the same thing with vaping, with tobacco harm reduction, is that they're politicizing the science. It's not political science, it's real science. And that's what we're trying to get people to understand that, because smoking is a serious problem. And everyone at the conference is trying to get people to stop smoking and to embrace tobacco harm reduction, because it's going to lengthen their lives. And guess what? It's going to save taxpayer money because of these health systems. You're going to have people that are going to have a healthier lifestyle, and they're not going to need taxpayer money at the end of their lives, whether in the United States, whether it's Medicare or Medicaid. So there's where more savings come from.
Now, we mentioned, and we've talked about this, and you certainly have here too as well, is that this is taxpayer funded. Let's talk for a moment about the actual delegates. Now, they're representing countries, but are they elected? And the answer is no. This whole thing is being handled by unelected bureaucrats.
Yeah, therein lies the problem, is that they're unelected, but also try to get information from the World Health Organization. In the United States, we have Freedom of Information Act laws, so we can try to get information. To try to get information out of the World Health Organization is impossible, and we have tried. We have tried to find out their travel budgets, and luckily through some investigative reporting, we're able to find that out. But if we try to find the cost of this delegation coming to Panama City, we are not going to be able to access that information. I mean, Brent, come on. They wouldn't even put on a live stream this morning for people to watch. They are not going to release this information. And therein lies another problem with this meeting, is we're never going to know really how much it's going to cost.
Now, Martin, I assume the media is not allowed into these sessions, are they?
The media is allowed in, but you have to be totally on board with everything the WHO wants. You know, if they look at you and if you even remotely question what they're doing, you're not going to get past. You know, if you've written a balanced article about harm reduction on the pros and cons, you're not going to get past. And even if you do get past, like you said, you'll get there to the first lunchtime session, and then you'll be kicked out. And when we're talking about this live stream, it's worth noting that they have now put out the live stream, but they put it out nearly 6 hours later. And they've said it's a live stream, but at the bottom there's a big little box that says not live. So it's recorded. Why they've done that, we don't know. They had a lot of problems earlier where people were trying to access the conference and being thrown out. And notable was 9 elected representatives of senators, I think they were, from Brazil. And they were refused access. They were refused access before. They would make a big fuss in the news in Brazil. And now apparently the ambassador from Brazil was called on this. I mean, that doesn't reflect well on Panama, that the Brazilian ambassadors had to be called to come and sort of have discussions with the WHO about why their elected representatives are not allowed into the discussion. So, it's the same old old chaos that we always expect at these COP conferences. I'll try and watch the live stream when I can, and it's going to be the same thing I explained this morning to delegates here, that it's going to be the same, speeches from the WHO saying how great they are, talking about sinister actors trying to, go against them. Because if you disagree with them, obviously you're in league with Satan or something. And it's all the same thing. But we were denied watching the statements from the countries which we were going to look at with interest, and I'll look at with interest. But yeah, again, it's the WHO doing one thing, not delivering. They already didn't deliver one conference. Now they've delivered the conference, but they haven't delivered the live stream. It's just the same old thing, and it's taking all that money that David was talking about, and they can't organise a conference properly and transparently like they should be doing.
So speaking of that, actually, I've got a clip from Clive Bates, who we all know so well, with some of his thoughts about COP10, and let's have a listen. Clive, the Conference of the Parties to the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control was postponed in November and rescheduled for this coming February in Panama. What do you make of COP10?
Well, it's a ridiculous circus, basically. It's a forum for minor officials, politicians to come along and do some grandstanding to sound as if they are potent and powerful players, to talk up grandiose ideas for tobacco control, bans and prohibitions and everything. To have a collective hate of the industry, that's a very big theme at these things, and to talk about everything they're doing to thwart the industry, even though the industry is leading the charge on the reformation of the nicotine market in a relatively positive way. That's still the thing that they go there for. WHO spoon feeds them with ridiculous briefings that it either does itself or gets done by compliant academics and activists, which basically tell you the kind of usual narrative that these products are harmful, addictive, afflict children. You should think about banning them. If you can't ban them, then treat them just like any other cigarette product. If you can't do that, then treat them like pharmaceutical aids or whatever. Always pressing for the most aversive, extreme regulation that you can. Prohibitions where they can get away with it. Partial prohibitions where they can't. It's an absolute sick joke. No one is paying any attention to the effects of the measures that they're talking about. So WHO, recommended and rewarded India for its prohibition of vapes and heated tobacco products in 2019, gave the then health minister a golden award or something, the highest honor that WHO can bestow for that legislation, for the ban. Yet no one has evaluated it. No one has looked at the unintended consequences. No one has assessed the vaping market. No one's seen what it did to smoking, whether opportunities were missed or new problems created. They're not interested. They just want to do the grandstanding with big statements and big laws. They don't really want to solve the problem in any kind of meaningful way. And that's despicable. What a waste of a forum where they could be doing something useful.
Well, there you go. You got to thank Clive to be able to put a fine point on these things.
Yeah. I mean, Yeah, he's absolutely right on all he says. And I've found it curious that just in the run-up to this COP10, they've done what they do at every COP. They've tried to smear anyone who they think might be doing what we're doing, coming up with an alternative view. So they've had webinars by Corporate Accountability, ones including the University of Bath, and they all come to the same thing. Look, these people are going to say this, and these people are going to say that. They're in league with Big Tobacco. I mean, the whole thing is. But what I find curious about this is the one recently where they called out the TPA, and they said the TPA is a bad organisation because they accused us of not listening to the science and abusing the rights of consumers. They actually put this out on their webinar, and I'm thinking, well, that's about right. Yeah, you're telling journalists this. I mean, some of the journalists will be watching this and thinking, well, yeah, that seems quite reasonable to me. So I'm glad that they're making our points for us on their conference calls, but the idea is to basically smear anyone who they think is going to make the wrong arguments or disagree with them in the run up to the COP.
And Brent, they also said for the delegates not to engage with the good cop people. So they were very, specific about that because God forbid they hear a different point of view, right? God forbid they talk to someone that has a different point of view about vaping and actually knows the science. So I think it's interesting that obviously they know that we're here. They know that we were supposed to be here in November, but we're here in February. And listen, we've gotten under their skin. We've gotten on their radar. That's the first step in this process. And this is not going to change today, overnight, but this is a process. And quite frankly, this is why I brought everyone together, because I want to start the process in earnest. These people have been doing amazing work for years now, and I want us to speak as one. All voices, I want all voices to be heard in this debate, and I want the World Health Organization to know, whoa, there's a lot of people out there that are concerned and are passionate about this issue. So this is just the beginning.
Can I just add, this approach to the WHO shows that they're scared of debate, telling delegates not to engage with us. They don't want to debate because they know if they had an honest debate, they'd lose it. And this is why the only thing they've got left is smearing people who disagree with them. They know they're doing the wrong thing. They know the science is against them, but they're just desperately clinging on by their fingertips to their policy proposals. And it's not going to last. It's totally unsustainable.
I've got a clip from that webinar that you both are talking about. I don't believe it's the TPA section, which I'm planning on pulling out. So what I wanted to do was set up why are they so maniacal about this issue? And one of them is because they're dragon slayers, and the dragon is big tobacco, and they can't get their heads around that there could be people and companies that are not connected to the tobacco industry that are pushing safer nicotine products. And even being said, the tobacco industry obviously are pushing forward in many ways that I find justifiable. And it all comes down to the Framework Convention on Tobacco Controls, Article 5.3. And in that, they have a guiding principle which states that there is a fundamental and irreconcilable conflict between the tobacco industry's interests and public health policy's interests. I mean, that's about as a hard line as you can get. And so in setting and implementing their public health policies with respect to tobacco control, parties shall act to protect these policies from commercial and other vested interests of the tobacco industry in accordance with national law. Meaning that, anybody that even smells or whiffs or had a coffee with anything connected to that industry is persona non grata. Let's take a listen to this clip. I don't know who this person is. Martin, maybe you'll recognize who it is and can tell us after.
So, of course, I looked up what are the sub-recommendations 4.9 in Article 5.3 guidelines. And let me just quickly read that out. Parties, so this is sub-recommendation 4.9 in Article 5.3 guidelines. Parties should not nominate any person employed by the tobacco industry or any entity working to further its interests to serve on the delegations to meetings of the COP, its subsidiary bodies, or any other bodies established pursuant to the decision of the Conference of the Parties. So it's really very clear. I think that the portion about, as I mentioned in my presentation about, furthering the interest of the industry, or tobacco. I think this is where like the Department of Agriculture or the Tobacco Board, the examples that I gave of the Philippines and Malaysia really apply. So it's very clear the COP has made a decision. And Toy, you're right to actually point out the word shall. It is not may, it is not should, it is shall, and that makes a big difference. So actually, these individuals should not be on the delegation. I think on the part of civil society, we probably need to point that out. That is our responsibility. I think there's definitely a step up in the interference and pressure on the COP by the tobacco industry. I think it's better organized now in terms of mobilizing its front groups. Its front groups have become far more aggressive now than they ever were before. And also all the research that has been funded, and also groups that have been funded by the Foundation for Smoke-Free World. Previously, they only had they funded two groups only to influence the COP. One was in they funded a group in Pakistan to actually influence EMRO, and also the Latin American region. There were two, but I think now they have consolidated that further, and KAC seems to be really heading the attack on both the COP as well as the WHO. So definitely, and I think in terms of booking out hotels, to conduct activities and all of that, I think would take place. At the same time, I think that the groups, the front groups have become bolder also because previously, it was fewer tobacco control countries, parties that are strong in tobacco control. There were very few actually who embraced e-cigarettes, but now there are more of them. And I think this has empowered both the industry as well as the front groups to do more. And while I have the floor, I just wanted to say, like the UK, for example, they have a really, really good guidance on Article 5.3, but it doesn't cover e-cigarette front groups. So I think that that's just an example of what has strengthened the front groups.
Well, that makes my blood boil. I don't know about you.
I watched two of those webinars, and I watched it when that woman said that. What that is about, to put it in context, they've come out with this idea of having declarations from the delegations to say that they comply with Article 5.3. Now, this is because for years they've been very irritated that delegations can bring whoever the government decides to put on their delegation, and sometimes that's people like in China's delegations particularly. It's people who work for the government but also have a hand in the tobacco industry, and this infuriates them. And when they mention the Philippines there, they're saying front groups and everything. They're furious with the Philippines because they disobeyed them 2 years ago. And they're trying to say, oh, they're all front groups, they're all working for industry. And there you saw that bit at the end about the UK and saying, oh, the UK's got great guidance in Article 5.3, but it doesn't include e-cigarette front groups. It's talking about the fact that the UK actually applies Article 5.3 as it is intended to be applied, which does not include vape manufacturers and the vape industry. It only includes the tobacco industry. So it just shows they just don't like anyone who disagrees with them. And I just think it's very encouraging that they are just so scared by our arguments that that's all they've got left, is to try and stop anyone else who has a differing opinion speak to them.
And Brent, let's unpack some of that for a bit, because there's a lot of drivel there by that webinar. And let me just say that she is so focused, and the World Health Organization is so focused on businesses and companies. What about consumers? What about people? And I will tell you, as someone who's trying to quit smoking, when they pick up a vape, do you think they care if it's a multi-billion-dollar company or it's a mom-and-pop vape shop? They don't care. They're looking for an off-ramp to cigarettes. And for them to be so obsessed with front groups, with companies, with big corporate interests, they're missing the point, man. And that's what really gets me frustrated, is they miss the point of this whole movement. It's not about any of that. It's about people having options to quit smoking. That person that is sitting there, smoking one cigarette after another, they want options, and they don't care who they buy it from. They just want to make sure that they can have a better lifestyle.
Can I add another thing as well about those webinars? The interesting thing I found was that they were both hosted and put together by Bloomberg-funded organizations. The people they invited to talk on there were all funded by Bloomberg. Every single one of them involved in those two webinars was funded by Michael Bloomberg, but that Bloomberg was not mentioned once. Now, are they afraid that do they know this is a conflict of interest, and why do they not mention it? Surely, if it's above board, they should be proud of that funding and they should be mentioning it on a regular basis. But they have said nothing about it in 2 hours of those webinars. Both of them were an hour. They didn't mention Bloomberg once.
Government money, nonprofit activist, groups, they don't count because they're righteous.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Truly. All right, gentlemen. So we're going to move into bringing in another interview subject. Your mics might stay hot here. I'm actually going to just do a quick thanks to our RegWatch sponsors. But bring in who you want there. Okay. So I think we have Chris Snowdon next.
Yeah, that's right.
We do.
Okay, and then we'll bring you back right after that. So I'd like to just take a moment here to thank one of our very important sponsors, and that's Demand Vape. They are the largest distributor of nicotine vaping products in the United States and a longtime supporter of vaping advocacy. And simply without Demand Vape support, RegWatch would not happen. So thanks to John Glauser and the team at Demand Vape. And as well, too, I'd like to actually talk for a moment about the Global Forum on Nicotine, and they are not a front group, in my opinion. That is for certain. Now, our viewers probably do know that we produce and release every 2 weeks an episode of RegWatch on GFN. It's called GFN Interviews. And that's with the Global Forum on Nicotine. Just trying to get that up there. There we go. Whoa. Switching my own show. Don't try it. And the Global Forum on Nicotine has got its annual conference on safer nicotine products and tobacco harm reduction, and it's in Warsaw, Poland. And again, it's happening this year from June 13 to 15. And you can find tickets at gfn.events. And now joining me is Chris Snowdon. How's it going, Chris?
Hi, Brent. Very good to see you again.
So, man, I think I got like a whole hour to listen to you about what's going on with COP. But now that you're down there, what do you think so far?
Well, we haven't found very much out, but we didn't really expect to. I was at the COP in Geneva, was it 6 years ago? We didn't find out very much then either. I just hope that not very much happens. That's been the story of the last few years. But I fear that this is the year that the WHO is really going to try and make up for lost time and really instigate a global crackdown on vaping.
Yeah, what do you think could happen here?
I just think a much stronger line from the WHO, just explicitly saying that, that these things are as bad as cigarettes, that they should definitely be banned in every case, and that is their only recommendation, really. Just continue with the general misinformation and scare stories, but it's all about vaping now. This is the thing. You remember, this is a tobacco conference. Nothing about vaping in the original treaty. Vaping hadn't been invented, but there's no suggestion that if something like this came along, they would go after it. On the contrary, harm reduction is explicitly mentioned in the treaty as being a good thing.
Let me ask you to kind of put this in context for us a little bit, because we just had, some very disastrous news in the UK with regard to the disposables ban. What's your reaction to that?
Well, you have to look at this in the political context of the United Kingdom. So firstly, there has been for a couple of years a bit of a panic about disposable vapes. It's not totally unfounded. There is a significant minority of minors who are using e-cigarettes, and particularly disposable e-cigarettes. So that doesn't really seem to be any question that the rise in youth vaping has been directly linked to disposables. But this is a problem of law enforcement overwhelmingly, a lot of these vapes themselves are illegal, and they are being illegally sold to minors, which is illegal in Britain, has been since 2015. There's been very little effort by the authorities to actually enforce this law, and as a result, unscrupulous retailers feel that they certainly, put it this way, they wouldn't do it if it was vodka, they wouldn't do it if it was tobacco, okay? It's the same law, right? You've got to be 18 to buy all these things, but they seem to turn a blind eye to the disposable vapes. They're getting a lot, as I say, these vapes are often illegal, so they get those for £1 less than perhaps they get from a legitimate retailer, and if anybody wants to buy them, they don't mind knocking them out in the corner shops. So you have a legitimate problem there, which, as I say, I think could be solved by putting a bit more money into law enforcement. You've also got the issue that the Prime Minister is very unpopular. He's leading a party that is almost certainly going to lose the next election, very probably by a landslide. So he has got less than a year in office. And frankly, I think he's just living his best life and doing the things he wants to do. If you look at Rishi Sunak's policies, a remarkable number of them do intersect with the interests of him and his family. So, for example, he's very keen on chess, so he decided to put a huge amount of money into grassroots chess. He's very keen indeed on maths. So he wants to force everybody up to the age of 18 to learn advanced mathematics. He's got 2 young daughters, I think they're about 11 and 13. So he brings in a law saying that no one under the age of 15 now will ever be allowed to buy tobacco. And of course, it's kids of that age who might be tempted by disposable vapes, so he's banning those as well. So, I mean, I think often when you look at these things, it's because there's been a big campaign against them, and the state-funded front groups, to use a phrase that's already been used on the show today, will be pushing for these kind of campaigns. The reality is, in this area, actually groups like Action on Smoke and Health, they were against the ban. They could see the unintended consequences. A lot of public health academics in the UK could warned of the unintended consequences. 87% of the vape market in Britain is disposables. Incredible statistics. So, what are these people going to do? They're going to either go to smoking, they're going to maybe get a refillable. Adults might switch to refillables. Cool. A lot of them probably will. But if the kids are already being sold disposables, what's to stop them being sold refillables? You're not solving the problem unless you address the enforcement of the law. So, there wasn't actually a big campaign for the disposable ban. I just think Rishi Sunak wanted to do it because he thought it would be popular. And indeed, about 70% of the population are in favour of banning disposables. And I'm a Democrat, Brent. I respect the wisdom of the common man. But if you look at other polls in Britain, you'll see that only about 24%, in the latest poll I saw, only 24% of the public understand in Britain that vapes are significantly less hazardous than smoking. And in fact, a majority think that they're either more hazardous or as hazardous as smoking. Now, I'm quite libertarian, but if I thought disposable vapes were more dangerous than smoking, even I might be tempted to support a ban. So I don't think we can do this purely on the basis that a large section of a horribly misinformed public are in favour of doing something they haven't really thought through the consequences of.
Now, what does this say then about the UK's long time known commitment to a more enlightened policy on safer nicotine products? Doesn't this undermine that to a large extent?
Yes, massively. We're going to go from being possibly the best country in the world in terms of our general attitude and regulation of e-cigarettes to certainly not being the worst. I mean, there's a lot worse countries than what the UK is going to be. I'm in Panama right now, where it's illegal to bring an e-cigarette in or sell them in any form. And Australia, various other countries are similar. But it's going to be pretty bad because we're not only banning the disposables, we're not only having this gradual sliding scale prohibition of tobacco, which nobody, even New Zealand, which came up with the idea, nobody's going ahead with that. There's also talk in the consultation response, because there was a public consultation to this, of some form of plainer packaging or plain packaging for e-cigarettes, some form of retail display ban for e-cigarettes, and perhaps worst of all, flavor bans. And we know from evidence in the USA and elsewhere that flavor bans are really bad news and will definitely push people back to smoking. So we still don't know the detail of this, and the devil will be in it, but just what we do know, there doesn't seem to be any doubt that he's going to go ahead with this sliding scale of prohibition, which is going to include things like heated tobacco, as well as cigarette papers, bizarrely. And he's definitely going to go ahead, I think, with the disposable ban. And it sets it does set a bad example to the world, because I know a lot of advocates in the rest of the world do point to the UK and point to Public Health England and other public health experts who have been positive about vaping in terms of harm reduction. And I don't think we are going to be a model to look up to anymore. And I do worry, and it could well be a coincidence, but I do worry that this was all announced the week before COP. Because presumably some of the people inside the building not too far away from me right now over the course of this week are going to be saying, look, even the UK is now taking a more prohibitionist line on this.
Yeah, you can't imagine that this news coming out of the UK doesn't embolden the bureaucrats in Panama this week.
I think it's very unlikely it won't come up. And I don't know whether it was coincidence it was announced. The government is in a big rush to get this stuff through, to be fair, so it's possible it'd be a coincidence. But I think people in the UK Department of Health, which is a nest of fanatics, I'd be surprised if there's people there who didn't realise, hang on, some of our people are going to Panama next week. This is something we can boast about.
Well, Chris, it was great. I mean, there's so much more I know that we could talk about. Do you have anything do you think you might want to add here?
No, I just hope we find something out this week. And as I say, I hope the fact that they can't even get a simple speech live streamed is a sign of such incompetence that although they might be itching to do and agree lots of things, they fall apart, and I don't know, maybe they lose the keys to the building tomorrow or something.
Right. Well, look, thanks very much for popping on. Everybody that's viewing, I'm just going to hit my be right back effect, and we're going to load up one more interview. Just hang tight. Thanks, Chris. All right, now back with our next guest, and those viewers of our RegWatch on GFN should be familiar with. This is Kurt Yale. How's it going?
How's it, Brent? How are you?
Good. Very good, thank you. Best you can be when you're covering a slow-moving disaster as this is. You're the co-founder of VSML. What is that again?
So Vaping Saved My Life is a consumer movement that I co-founded in 2017.
And you're from South Africa?
That's correct, yes. I'm from South Africa, yeah.
So what do you think so far here on the first day of COP?
I think I think Chris and David and Martin have clearly indicated it is a slow disaster. It is like watching the iceberg approaching the Titanic, and no one seems to be doing anything about it. So it is, yeah, it's quite funny actually, considering the amount of money and preparation that should have gone into this, whereas Chris quite clearly indicated that they couldn't even implement a live stream on time.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on that are that they just didn't want to send it out live. You know, they wanted to control the release on that a little bit more. I mean, it was a tiny little box at the bottom of that page, and they definitely got a feeling about them, one of total control. And I guess that's why it's tobacco control.
Absolutely.
So fill me in a little bit. It's been about 18 months since we last talked. How has it been going in South Africa? Did some of those more restrictive laws get put into place?
Absolutely not. We're still in the public participation process. of this bill. And we've still got, unfortunately, I'll be missing at least 2 of those hearings at different provinces, but we still have 3 provinces to consult. And then it should go into some kind of deliberation with the Health Portfolio Committee. And then recommendations from that comes. So we're quite far away with regards to having the bill passed. And what's, I think, complicating the situation is that we're now having a national election, which should be between anywhere May and August of this year, which could see a change in that committee, given the fact that the ruling party is under pressure and might not get a majority as they currently have. So I think that there is an air of them trying to push it through. However, just from a procedural point of view, the public participation has failed.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that it's being dragged out as long as it has. And I guess that's a good thing, as opposed to them implementing something quickly. Speaking of that, like, from what you understand with what COP is proposing, the one that I'm always interested in is this redefining smoke as vapor. I just find it, I say Soviet, but it's a very communistic, very totalitarian kind of a technique. I mean, Orwell would fit perfectly in with Orwell. What do you make of that as a particular issue, and do you think it's a big threat?
Well, interestingly enough, it's currently found its way into this bill. You know, the bill was revised during the process from 2018, and that particular phrase is found in the bill of redefining smoke as to anything that emits an emission or an aerosol in the South African bill. So this is clearly something that either the South African government had picked up and included in their bill. And I find it absolutely absurd. And as indicated, that we're going to see smoke-free kitchens, we're going to see smoke-free saunas. In fact, we might have a smoke-free sky, given the definition that they want to imply here. And it is absolutely a perverse take on science and how we generally categorize things. And it's dangerous. It is really dangerous.
Now, how long are you down there? For the whole week?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Are you going to be able to do any protesting?
I'm not quite sure. I come from South Africa, so protesting has a different take on it. So I don't think the Panamanian government would appreciate South African protesting in their country. So, but if the call is to rally and raise our voices, I think it's something that we should consider.
Well, that's great. Well, Kurt, thanks very much. I really do appreciate it. Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you, Brayton. I'd like to thank the team of TPA for giving consumers a platform to voice their opinion and to indicate, particularly to the delegates at the FCTC, that there are voices and we shouldn't be considered as the orphans in this discussion. In fact, we should be the people that they should be going to and having discussions, because the reality is that there is a solution, and consumers will choose that solution if given the correct and appropriate information. And if the true mission is to help people quit smoking and reduce the non-communicable diseases as related to smoking, then every option should be investigated, explored, and communicated correctly and appropriately.
Well, that's well said, and I really do like that, orphans. I mean, that's a very good way of putting it. Kurt, thank you so very much. I'm going to jump to our Be Right Back slate, and we should have Martin and David Williams back here to close off our live stream. Thanks again, Martin. All right, we're back. You guys are fast in the chair moving around.
Been working on my cardio.
That's good. So let's just talk a little bit briefly about what happened today at the event, and then let's talk about what's going to happen tomorrow. And I've got the agenda here to put up.
Yeah, so today was really the intro to the event, is that we wanted to welcome all the attendees. Listen, people came from around the world. You just spoke to Kurt, who came from South Africa. We have a gentleman from New Zealand, really all over the globe. And we're just glad to have everyone together, here today and really the rest of the week. So we wanted to set the table, and we talked about the live stream, and we really planned our day around the live stream. Is that we had a quick panel this morning at 9, and then at 10 o'clock, we wanted to show the live stream live on the screen. Well, guess what? We all know that it didn't happen. So that was a little frustrating, but really kind of confirmed why we're here. Is that we knew that shenanigans were going to happen, and they sure did early on in the day. And it was nice to have in the afternoon to introduce people to the different experts from around the world, because I think a lot of people talk to each other maybe on Twitter, other social media, but to actually meet people in person, I thought this was really good opportunity for people to actually shake someone's hand and see them in person. So that's really what kind of set up the day for us.
This is an excellent turnout that you guys have gotten. And let me just bring up the fact again, hammer this home, is that this was all set up for November, and then about 10 days before, WHO FCTC canceled the conference. And so this is the rescheduling of it, which means you guys had to reschedule too, and all of these experts and people that have shown up were rescheduled. Are you pleased with the level of turnout for this rescheduled COP, good COP, bad COP?
Yeah, I've said on a number of occasions today, on the streams that we've been doing, that I'm extremely proud of the lineup that we've managed to put together for this event. We had an excellent lineup in November, but as is obviously going to happen, there were some people who weren't available in February, and so we lost a few, but we replaced them with equally competent speakers, and we've got a fantastic lineup, and we've had some great chat off of the live streams as well, and there's lots of networking going on. We've got 30 consumers from Latin America who have come along and been watching. We've had plenty of media. We had about 30 people from the media coming along, and we've got a really good crowd here, and we're really looking forward to the rest of the week. We've still got some experts on their way. Some of us have messaged saying we're just getting on planes, so there's going to be even more talent coming. So we're finishing off the introductions of the experts we've got tomorrow, and then we're going to some panels, and we're also doing some live streams which Lindsay, my colleague, is going to organise, and we've got a whole load of content coming out. So anyone who's watching this, keep an eye out for all our content, and I think you'll find something that you'll enjoy. But it's been great, and like I said, I can't emphasise enough how proud I am of the lineup that we've managed to put together for the event.
Well, it's a super job. And David, big thanks to you and everybody at TPA.
Yeah, listen, when this was canceled in November, I'm stubborn, right? I'm stubborn, and I hate the World Health Organization. You put those two things together, well, guess what? No matter when this conference was happening, we were going to be here, and we were going to bring people to Panama City or wherever it was. Because it just made me a lot madder when this happened in November. And let's keep this in perspective. It was canceled about 10 days before it was supposed to start in November. We had contracts with hotels, we had everything set up, and those just went up in flame. And, and listen, I'm not gonna lie, it cost us some money to do this, but it was well worth it, because this is something that we need to do every 2 years. This is not just a COP 10 thing. This is going to be COP 11. And until we change the policies of the World Health Organization, TPA will be here.
Well, that's excellent. Well, then on that note, let me thank everybody for tuning in. We will be back here again tomorrow on Tuesday, February 6th at 4 p.m. Eastern. And between now and then, you can find all this content. The TPA Twitter is what again? At taxpayers, or Protect Taxpayers?
At Protect Taxpayers, yep.
It's great. Okay, we'll follow you guys on Twitter. Do the same. Look for us on Twitter. And thanks, everybody. Have a really good one.